Hi, I'm Tim. He's Brian. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. We are the team with the theme, and today's theme is not Rolex. I must remind you that even if your theme is Rolex, the best place to buy, trade, and sell watches is thewatchbox.com, particularly when you want to sell one watch or an entire collection. Brian, what have you brought today?
So when you said not Rolex, I went what I thought was straightforward and simple. You went like balls to the walls over here. So, we've got a little bit of everything for everybody. So why don't we start with the dressiest watch on the table. Here we have a Patek Philippe reference 5296G-001. So this is the first iteration of the watch featuring a silver track dial, white gold case, 38 millimeters, automatic with a date. To be honest, I think that this watch did not get nearly enough credit when it came out at the time. I think that trends gravitated more towards being a more traditional watch. There's a variation of this watch where it's just a straight silver dial. I think that they thought that this style, or consumers in general probably thought that the style was a little bit too casual or too playful for the purpose of the watch. But now with a much greater trend moving towards casual dress, this watch is all the more relevant. The 5296 as a reference in total is completely discontinued. The only Calatrava that Patek Philippe is currently making is the 5196. So expect to see more watches like this coming from them in future collections. Here Tim has it on the wrist, perfectly balanced. For me, 38 millimeters, probably the best size watch, at least for my wrists and a lot of, I guess a lot of other wrists in general. But, I've always loved the reference. I've always thought it's very multidimensional. You could put this on the strap that it's on, or you could go more casual, and the watch leans both ways. This
is probably the most desirable automatic time and date Calatrava of the 2000s, maybe of the last 20 years. Everyone likes two things about this watch. One, the proportions, and two, the sector dial. Inspired by vintage Calatravas, the sector dial has this luminous, almost like self-propelled energy about it. It really does appear to reflect back more light than it absorbs. A combination of several different silvers, broken up by blue sector elements. It has a lot of nuance to it in spite of being an entirely flat printed dial. Now the watch itself is only about 8.8 millimeters thick, and at 38 millimeters, it's a great size. This watch was a little bit overlooked when it was new back in 2005 because it was a different time. Back then, every watch had to be bigger, banger, and Bentleyer, and this was none of the above. An awesome and enduring design, possibly one of Patek's best of the Terry Stern era. This is increasingly sought as a discontinued and revered modern Patek model. I really like that choice. Yeah. Okay, let's go with something that is all of those superlatives I mentioned before. It's not a big bang and it's not Bentley, but it is big and it makes a bang.
Did you use Bentleying as a verb? Was it a verb?
I used it as an adjective.
As an adjective.
So this watch right here is all of those things. It's not an Hublot Big Bang and it's not a Breitling for Bentley, but it does capture the spirit of those watches. This is the G-Shock Dream Project, originally launched at least in concept at Basel World 2015, and then rolled out nominally for the anniversary of G-Shock in 2018. That was the 35th anniversary. This actually came out in 2019. 35 pieces, solid gold, 300 grams. And the watch comes with a steamer trunk worth of accessories. Now, this one is the equivalent of a factory-sealed Patek. It's got all the original wrapping on it. A few thoughtful details, Patek. Bracelets with removable links fixed by screws. And not only that, you can see that all of the links on the bracelet on both sides are removable. What does the watch give you? Well, it gives you a lot. Not necessarily more technically speaking than a standard G-Shock, but that means you're getting a ton of functionality. 4 alarms, a countdown timer with alarm, a split-second chronograph, 39 time zones, a backlight, a perpetual calendar, split 12 24-hour displays, and much, much more, including backlight, a feature that can find your phone by a sort of echolocation, and the ability to synchronize all of its many time zones and timers via your phone. It also is solar powered, and with a single solar charge, it can run for 22 months in the dark. 200 meters water resistant, and allegedly, delivery was late. It didn't arrive in the 35th anniversary of G-Shock because they were working on making it just as shock resistant as the standard plastic watch, which means you can throw it out the 3rd story of your house, and assuming it lands on the grass, it will survive. That watch is beyond belief. It comes with a handmade iron kettle. It comes with a giant Polonia wood presentation box. Again, 35 pieces made, so if you want the only one on the block, buy one. You're guaranteed to have it. As far as where this watch sits in the pantheon of luxury, it's definitely luxury. If luxury is more than you need, that's way more than you need right there. But I would also say it's more than you expect, because in the hand, it's beautifully hand finished. And if you just think of it as jewelry, it's basically an elaborate handmade Japanese bracelet that just happens to have a timing module.
So who's making the case and bracelet on this piece?
You know, it's interesting because there's no external branding, and a lot of times when you see gold bracelets and cases and clasps on Japanese watches, they're made in Italy. This one is entirely made in Japan. So as far as I know, this was done on a commission basis for Casio, and they're not sharing exactly who did the metalwork, but you can tell by the finishing.
Well done.
It is entirely hand finished, and where it's not satinated, it is black polished. This is entirely made in Japan, which is surprisingly rare for a G-Shock, as today they're mostly made in China. Well, that's the real thing. Japanese domestic market cool, luxury watch price, and more features than you can shake a stick at. Guys, this is unprecedented territory for us, so let us know. If you're wondering, $104,000 is what we're selling this one for pre-owned, and yes, that is more than its $70,000 retail price, because that's the market for this stupid thing. And I'm saying that is stupid money. If you want to have an awesome watch that is just flat out ridiculous, this is going to be your first option.
The first thing I'm doing after this is I'm going to take a look at that steamer trunk.
Dude, I'm doing, for the first time, an unboxing of a watch. I've never done an unboxing in 6 years, and this is my 6-year anniversary with the company. This thing's getting an unboxing, so there you go. Okay, the opposite of big, thick, gold, and extravagant, thin.
Beautiful. So we had an Octo on the last show, decided to bring another one. So here we have an Octo Finissimo, 40 millimeters, sandblasted titanium throughout the case and bracelet, ultra thin, automatic. For me, this watch is the watch that has put Bulgari back on the map in terms of both watchmaking, and then I would also say cool functional sports watches for men. So designed by Genta. You've got, it's not designed by General Genta?
No, it is a Genta design, you're absolutely correct, but Genta the company. It's a Gerald Genta design from 2000. So he had exited stage left and he was gone into the...
Okay, so Genta the company, yeah. Genta the company. So he knows about it, he knows that it exists.
It was of his time, that is correct.
Okay, so ultra thin, to me, extremely comfortable. Even though it's 40 millimeters, it actually lends itself to fitting slightly larger. I think as far as fit on the wrist goes and visually, it probably looks and fits more like a 42 because of the shape of the case.
Definitely.
But because of how light the watch is, you know, it's not difficult to pull off. I know lots of customers that have it. Jason Main, who works with us, he has the watch. He swears by it. You can put the watch on a crocodile strap as well. And they've made a lot of different iterations of this watch since the inception of this piece, but whether it's the ultra thin tourbillon that we had before, but you know, all fantastic.
A lot of things to love about this watch. As we noted earlier, Gerald Genta became today's manufacturer Bulgari. Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth in the Vallée de Joux, they are still the manufacturer that builds these watches. As you can see, the movement, over 36 millimeters in diameter and only 2¼ millimeters thick, is designed specifically for the case. The watch is 5.15 millimeters thick, and the attention to detail right down to the media blasted titanium dial is exquisite. Now, what I also love is the design of the bracelet, which is super flat, but if you look at how the clasp folds, when it closes, it actually closes into a recess in the bracelet. So when it's closed, it fits flush, and you can really see that recess inside of the bracelet. There's a cutout for the folding member of the clasp. Now, it's an impressive piece too because they use a platinum micro rotor. Most companies are going to settle for gold. Patek Philippe would. Right here, we've got platinum 950 for the rotor. 55 to 60 hour power reserve, genuinely impressive. And now Bulgari able to make all parts of the watch. That means not just the movement, but the bracelet, the case, the movement, the clasp, even the dials made in-house. So this is a true vertically integrated high horology manufacturer. And I have to say, all things considered, manufacture Bulgari is now persuasive. It's more than the sum of its parts. I think that is going to be the design identity of the company, and that shows immense confidence. Because if you look at the current IWC Ingenieur line, you see what happens when a current generation of designers is uncomfortable using what came from the past. That's why none of the current IWC Ingenieurs look like the Gerald Genta designed Jumbo Ingenieur. At Bulgari, they were comfortable adapting the Octo case and making it their own. They changed it over the years, they evolved it, but they didn't discard it because it wasn't invented here. So there's a tremendous amount of competence, but also confidence in the way Bulgari is building watches these days.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, and I'm very particular about watches that I like to wear. I mean, it happens to be fantastic, and it fits my wrist nicely. It's because of the curvature and the way how small and thin the links are that it can really form fit around. One of the other really nice things that when I first saw the watch, that I appreciated that Bulgari did was that they didn't simply just come with another integrated steel sports watch that looks like everybody else's sports watch. You know, they really created something unique and different and took a shot. Yeah. And I think that paid dividends big time because it doesn't look like anything else. It doesn't, even though, you know, again, it's designed by Genta the company, it doesn't look like anything else, and it doesn't look like anything else that anybody else is doing. And they took it to another level, and I think that that's what's made the watch really special, and
I
at
agree.
least respected by watch collectors, right? Like for a company like Bulgari that both does watches and jewelry, I think for them setting themselves apart as a true watch manufacturer was important. And I think that they really did that with this watch.
That's absolutely true. Bulgari, a little bit like Cartier and Piaget, has had to sort of run from its reputation as a manufacturer of jewelry and watches for women. And I remember back when I saw Minority Report with Tom Cruise a million years ago, there was a scene with a Bulgari watch, and I think I saw it in college, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I would not say that today. Bulgari is a legitimate watch brand, and we were talking earlier about integrated bracelet watches being everywhere these days. Well, Bulgari has invested more recently in that genre. Think of the last time the Nautilus was all new. You know, it was 2006. That watch came out for 2017, and GPHG Men's Watch Prize winner. So a decorated.
And they've continued advancing it, which is they've continued making movements, and you know
the chronograph too.
Exactly. So they haven't settled with it just coming out with the one piece. And you know, again, I happen to really like the watch. And if somebody were to ask me, like, what's the watch that I'm not thinking about and I'm not looking at that's not going to be on everybody else's wrists, that's not a Nautilus or an Aquanaut or a Rolex or an AP, this is the watch.
Yeah, definitely. And because it's a big brand with a bigger company behind it, no problems with sales, service, that sort of thing. That's a big deal when you're buying a watch these days. Okay, we're going to go for a timepiece that flies way under the radar because even though it's part of a major group, Glashutte Original seems to be the brand Swatch forgot it owned. Out of Saxony, a brand that does things the way an independent would, and this 42mm 100-piece white gold Senator Excellence Perpetual calendar came out of the company in 2018. 100 pieces made. The extraordinary feature here is that the dial side of the movement has been turned on a rose lathe to create an extravagant guilloche open center aperture-style calendars for the Perpetual. You've got, of course, the moon phase display off-center, the signature German-style big date, and then you've got a glorious white gold case that wears well on any wrist with the caliber 3602, which is Geo's most advanced in-house automatic movement. 100-hour power reserve, silicon hairspring, an extraordinary battery of chronometric tests that this watch goes through in-house prior to delivery. So you're getting a lot of value in that movement. It is their most advanced, their longest standard automatic power reserve, their first use of silicon in a caliber, and that movement is brand new architecture since it came out in 2016 at Basel World. And when you throw the watch on the wrist, it is very special. Because of the way these lugs are shaped and the geometry of the case, you can see they're also short and stubby. So the watch wears well on a small wrist, even though it's a 42. It has a lot of character, and the fact is, Geo now makes all important parts of the watch, the movement, but also the dial built by their in-house manufacturers, which are scattered from Pforzheim to Glashütte. A lot of heritage here. A lot of folks forget that the original Lange und Söhne, as well as the ancestral companies founded by F.A. Lange back in 1845, the successor to those companies is the modern Glashutte Original, and today's Lange is a reconstituted firm under the old name, but it is not the corporate successor. It is not the legal successor successor to those old watch brands. Geo is a never closed, never out of business watch brand in Glashütte that aggregated all those original ancestral brands just after the communists arrived after World War II. So the survivor of original East German high horology really is this Geo company.
I was like leaning this way. No, so, exactly as you said, one of the, Glashütte has always been, prized for the value associated with how much watch it delivers for how much it costs. All in-house movements, exceptionally well finished. Probably when they truly relaunched in a big way in the States, didn't get as much credit as Lange did, but producing exceptional product. And I think as far as value goes, a much better value proposition.
Oh, without a doubt. And I'll also say that there's a lot to love about this brand because on top of everything else, you're still getting a lot of fine finish in the German style. My favorite detail on this movement is the reduction wheel of the winding system, which has a double solar spiral on it. And that's created manually by an artisan who just does that little wheel all day long. So very cool stuff, a lot to love. And again, with 100 pieces made from a brand that's already fairly scarce, this guarantees you exclusivity. And you're getting it with the infinite resources and forever service guarantee of buying a Swatch brand because, frankly, they've got the money.
But you know what? They've been, as a German brand, I would say they've been a lot more adventurous than other German brands that I've seen. Let's call it take Nomos out of the equation. But, as far as doing a skeletonized watch like this, their Senator 60s line, using the different colors, the different treatments on the dials, they've really pushed the boundaries, I think, as far as the experimentation goes, while also keeping a classically styled watch. And not to take away from Lange, because again, they do make beautiful products. I think that there is a lack of imagination at that brand in terms of they could push the boundaries further than they're pushing. They could experiment more. I know they came out with the Odysseus, but again, at the end of the day, there's the craziest thing I've seen them do recently is they put an aventuring dial on something like that. I think
it worked, but it wasn't that adventurous.
I think that there's more that they can do.
I would also say, if you look at Glashütte Original as a company, look at all the things they're willing to do that Lange would almost never do. The one-year dégradé dials, whether orange or green, Lange would never do
Love
that.
those.
The 60s iconic, Lange would never do that. The Senator Diary, Lange would never do that. The Sport Evo and Sport Evo Impact sports watches of the 2000s, Lange would not do that. And Geo has been doing steel since long before the Lange Odysseus landed. So there's a lot of adventure and I think joie de vivre in that company. I need to figure out how to say that or express that in German because we're not in Switzerland anymore.
Even the Sport Evo was ahead of its time.
Oh yeah.
Again, they were, the problem is like you think like, okay, they were producing sports watches in the 2000s, and not to say that there wasn't a sports watch craze, but it didn't reach the crescendo until, let's call it 17, 18, 19. And, they had already launched the watches from a while back. And, if they had taken some of those watches and I think launched them in 17 or 18, it would have been a very different response.
Yeah, definitely. If you look back to the 2000s, Lange was selling gold watches, hand over fist, and platinum watches. And Geo was thinking, let's make a steel sports watch. Does that sound familiar? If it does, you realize how far ahead of the curve they were. Okay, your third watch, steel sports watch, par excellence.
Yeah, so 42 millimeter Aquatimer, blue dial, black rubber strap, stainless steel case. I forgot to mention it's an IWC Cousteau edition. For me, this is probably one of my top 3 favorite IWCs. I love 42 millimeter cases in general for me are too big. The way that these lugs slope down, it fits my wrist. I'm a big fan of soft rubber straps that aren't overly rigid. This fits that bill. The strap itself almost fits like it's a super soft and supple croc strap. I just think that they executed the watch really nicely. A lot of attention to detail. For me, it's one of those watches that, again, goes overlooked if you're looking for something a little bit different or you're looking to go outside the normal Rolex path of, a steel sub or, this is really a great option. And, you're not going to break the bank, and you can actually pick these up at good prices pre-owned.
Yeah, these are tremendous watches. First of all, it's unusual to think of a major sports watch company that doesn't put huge emphasis on its dive watches, But that's sort of the case with IWC. You hear all about Pilot's watches, and it seems like we've got an all-new Pilot's collection every 36 months from them. But the Aquatimer, which dates back to 1967, is sort of the hidden gem in the collection. You're getting a lot of functionality, and significantly, you're getting a dive watch that doesn't look like a Rolex Submariner or Blancpain 50 Fathoms clone. They do things their own way. You could see that in the design of the case, which has strong, thrusting, sculpted, almost Carrera-like angular lugs. And then you've got
Say thrusting one more time.
Thrusting. And as you can see, it is a no crown layout, which is acknowledging reality that you don't need crown guards on a sports watch. If you lose your crown while it's on your wrist, you probably lost a chunk of your wrist. You have bigger concerns. So the no guard profile makes it easier to use the crown before dive when your hands might be wet, sweaty, or gloved. Also, if you look to the opposite side of the case, what appears at first glance to be a helium escape valve is actually a drain for a differential that operates the internal mechanism of the safe dive ratcheting bezel. I'm not actually taking my fingers off the bezel. You can see, like the original, reference 812 Aquatimer with the super compressor case, this has an internal bezel, and you cannot accidentally turn it backwards because it's a dive-style bezel. There's tons of lume. The watch itself, of course, is part of the Cousteau series, which means you can see the captain on the back, and although it's not in color, you can imagine the red coloration of his beanie. And if you look very closely, there is a little lick of red on the second's hand, and that is to remind you of the signature color of Jacques Cousteau. Now, the watch, of course, also features a quick-release lug system. I tried to demonstrate it earlier, but I don't have enough nails on my manicured hands. Of course, I'm doing those watch videos full-time.
You can move this to a bracelet if you wanted.
You could move this to a bracelet. You could move it to a leather strap. There are options. If you just want to clean the case more thoroughly, you have that quick-release system. It's related to the system used on the original 2002 Cartier Roadster. And, of course, you've got a tank-tough ETA movement inside. So it's a very serviceable watch, in addition to being a very tough watch and 300 meters water resistant. It's also not as thick as it looks at first glance. It's sheer of side, but it's not thick of construction. Really cool piece.
Yeah, so for me, I look at watches like this as true tool watches, watches that I would wear into the ocean, that you can beat up, that you could really put it to the test, and you're not going to have to worry that something's going to happen. So there's obviously, every brand now is making sports watches, and every brand now is making, let's call it, transitional sports watches that can be dressed up or dressed down. Some of those, to be honest, I wouldn't feel too comfortable wearing into the pool or wearing into the ocean. This, no issue whatsoever. I'm going to hold it up to the light, actually. So
I'm demonstrating the quick-release system,
this thing
so we know what's happened there.
Super cool lume. So we're going to, you show off the next watch, I'm going to get this thing glowing.
Okay. The next watch, believe it or not, does not feature lume, but it has everything else you could possibly want. Greubel Forsey Tourbillon 24-second. That's right. 43.5 millimeters in white gold. It is a showcase for a hyper tourbillon. As you can see, a frenetic blaze of balance and hairspring, angled, animated, and visible from almost every angle, as there is a viewport in the flank of the case. Now, this is a 24-second tourbillon, distinct from the 1-minute tourbillon watches that are almost standard. Oh, let's see if it'll work. Okay, Brian's doing a lume shot. I'm going to try to cover this up.
Light in here. A little bit.
We'll set up a lume shot proper in our new studio, folks. That is coming. All right, so Greubel Forsey, a little bit of introduction. If you're not familiar with the brand, they're based out of La Chaux-de-Fonds. Robert Grubel and Stephen Forsey, the two watchmakers behind it. Previously, they had APRP experience and a company called Completime that they founded prior to launching Greubel Forsey in the mid-2000s. Now, the watch you see here features one of their signatures, which is the tourbillon, but they're also known for extravagant and unconventional case shapes that are designed to fully express the mechanisms within. The tourbillon circulates 24 seconds to a rotation, and as you can see, the entire bridge structure over the tourbillon carriage is black polished. I'll get as close as I can here for Andrew, who's doing a great job focusing on a moving target. Now you can see the depth of the dial. The movement itself is 9.35 millimeters thick, so you get a better view of the tourbillon in action. There's a power reserve indicator on the flank of the case, and as you can see, the case band itself features both black polished lug profiles and welded lugs. Now when you look on the underside, you can also see that the bridge finish is extravagant. Multiple interior angles, enormous blued screws, frosted surfacing, and of course that My Short material originally used on pocket watches. You'll also note that this inclined tourbillon is absolutely fit to the movement, meaning though it's a large watch, that's only because the movement itself is almost 37 millimeters in diameter, an extraordinary match of movement to case from a company that has 100 employees in La Chaux-de-Fonds, but only puts out 100 watches a year, almost a 1-to-1 ratio of watches to employees, because of the energy that goes into manually finishing these watches and crafting them by hand in every instance. Greubel Forsey watch is big, though surprisingly wearable. As you can see, 43.5 millimeters, but I'm wearing it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. So if you've got that smaller wrist, note the watch is big, but the lugs are not. It doesn't even reach the edges of my wrist. So this is a timepiece that is larger than life, but not larger than your wrist. Truly special stuff and holy grail type watch finish. If you want to know who is the best in the industry, we could argue all day, but Greubel Forsey is always part of that discussion. So you're looking at something approaching the finest available.
Now, how many watches do they make a year?
Well, I think it's somewhere between 99 plus 1 and 101 minus 1.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say. But in any case, all the watches you see here are for sale. Remember, tmasso at thewatchbox.com if you want to reach out to buy, trade, or sell a watch. Brian is always accessible. He reads the comments below this video, so I want you to give us feedback about what future topics should be. Brian, I'm turning it over to you for closing thoughts.
You know, just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We are so happy that we've got the Bolt back and going every week. As Tim mentioned, please, if there's any feedback, any comments, any topics that you guys want discussed on the show, we're all ears. We're doing this for you, and you know, the more feedback we get, the better content that we can put out. So I'm Brian.
I'm Tim.
This is The Vault, and thanks for logging in.